All right, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining the June 2021 Life Design Analysis webinar. I am your host as usual, Charlie Conron. I'm the CTO and founder of Life Design Analysis. And as usual, as I tell you guys every month, I think we have a great webinar this month. June, oftentimes, we think about taking a little bit of vacation, especially this year as travel and everything starts to open back up. But it's a good time to focus on practice management. And this month, we're going to focus all around how to maximize the value of your life insurance block of business. And that's for people who are building a block of business. Maybe you're at the end of your career thinking about selling your block of business, or if you're new to the business or newer to the business and looking to grow and acquire blocks of business. We're going to show some strategies today that you can use LDA to really help maximize the value that you'll either get from your block of business or help you make better decisions on a block that you'd purchase. Now, just before we get started, I'll just go over a few housekeeping items. This is something that we are recording this webinar, so if you happen to miss it or if you're looking to watch certain aspects of it again, it will be found on our website, lifedesignanalysis.com. Navigate over to the blog section and you can watch the recording. You'll find it on the same page that you registered. If you are watching this for the first time and not already an existing subscriber, remember you can sign up free. We do have a 30-day free trial. Again, you get the best package for 30 days. Afterwards, there's lots of different plans that you can choose from, but essentially, again, you get that first 30 days for free. You can try it out. I'm going to be illustrating this on our Premier subscription. And remember, if you are a Life Guide subscriber, you do get an exclusive discount to LDA, so definitely reach out to us on our live chat. We also have many MGA discounts, so even if you're watching this, you've done the free trial and you're thinking of considering it, definitely get in touch with our sales support team, and again, we'll help you out finding the right package for you. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into our webinar. I do want to mention as well, we do have a blog article that goes with this. So on that blog section of the site, you are going to see an article that sort of pairs well with the webinar, a little bit more text, and again goes through some of these different concepts, as well as adds a little bit that I won't get into, some of the things LDA does. But a great read if you're thinking about this and are at either side of that, buying or selling the block of business. Now, the idea for this webinar really came out of a conversation with a senior leader at a distributor around a conversation around succession, and not only the value that LDA provides in the short term, but also how that can benefit them as advisors leave the business and new advisors join and take over those blocks of business. And one of the key factors that consistently comes up is this consistency, a consistent process on how we work every single case to ensure that, again, not only are we compliant while we own the block of business, but when that block of business is passed off or when someone acquires that block of business, that if there is an issue or if there is some kind of claim or audit in the future, that the advisor who has succeeded the original advisor actually has this kind of documentation and can prove how the product was established. So when we talk about carving a workflow, we've always heard that consistency breeds success, and the same is true when building your block of business. If you can come up with a process on every single file that you work through all of the kind of the compliance requirements, that's going to add a lot of value to the advisor who takes over that block of business. And again, when we talk about things like consistency, we want to talk about things like every file has an advisor disclosure, every file has a needs analysis, every product was compared for suitable options to ensure that the suitability was there, and even newer requirements, things like a reason why letter. And again, by being able to document these and present them in every single case, and not just the big cases, your whole life cases and things like that with high premiums, I'm talking even the small term cases, it really puts you in a better position from compliance. And if you can pass off that information and have a record of it, being able to establish and document that to the buyer of the block of business can add a tremendous amount of value. What we found in sort of researching this was about 90% of advisors do not have a succession plan, and a lot of advisors when buying and selling do sort of guesswork. They're a little bit blind in the fact that they don't know exactly what they're getting in the book. They don't know how much work has been done. They don't know how much opportunity is there. And so by being able to kind of produce these things and show that you have a consistent workflow, you can get an exponential amount more for your block of business. So let's dive into some of these workflow ideas, and we'll start off with sort of the compliance documents of advisor disclosure, needs analysis, and show how you could use this and do this on every single case so that when it comes time, you can success that block of business. So without further ado, I'm going to start off and log into LDA. Again, we are a web-based service if you're watching this for the first time, so this is something that you can access from anywhere. In our first example, I'm going to start off by creating a new client, and I'm just going to show this as if we've acquired a prospect and we're creating sort of the client file, and how we can ensure that on every single client that we work with, we're really following this process and making sure that all the elements are there, because we know in the future that's going to increase the value of our block of business. So again, as soon as we get a prospect, what we want to do is create a new client in the system, and I'm just going to call this. Call it Joe Smith. Again, I'm going to make Joe just a 50-year-old male. And again, I won't fill in too many of the different details here. Again, always good to fill in this kind of documentation. Things like email, phone number, really helps the next advisor have the proper record on file. So keeping good records is always beneficial. I'll just call this joe@gmail.com. And I'll just make up a kind of a random phone number here. So keeping good client files are always good, because again, when we pass this off to the next advisor, they're going to need to get in touch and introduce themselves. So any of these additional details that you can fill in there are very kind of beneficial to the client file and actually make your book more valuable. Again, I'll just throw in 300 Wellington Street, and I'll just say London, Ontario. So again, you can see when you do it in LDA, we're going to automatically fill. We sort of look it up. We use an API to basically kind of expedite that content creation. And again, you can see very easy to create a contact. Now I can save this contact into the kind of the system of record. And that's as easy as it is to create a new contact. Now, any work that I do on Joe Smith in the future is going to be documented to the client file. So I'll just show you on a brand new client. If we pop over to the client file, we're just going to see sort of that tombstone information that we just sent. You can see we've started a plan but haven't done anything, and there are no in-force policies yet for this client file. So again, you can see it's fairly blank. As I said, as we work through this file, we want to satisfy certain compliance requirements that, again, are going to add to that value of our block of business. And the first most logical one is a needs analysis. So again, if I've got Joe here, I can go in and edit this needs analysis. I can share a link to my client to, if I want them to fill it out. Or again, part of your process might be doing this live with them, so you could sit down with them. Some people still collect it through conversation and kind of make notes on a notepad and paper. But again, bringing it back when you're actually, going back into your system and saying, how am I going to solve this insurance need that they have? Make sure you get in the habit of adding these things like the needs analysis, because again, you are going to have them on file to show, sort of that progression of the case, how you establish the need, how you worked through it. So I'm just going to say current insurance is 0. Joe has, we'll just call it maybe like 40,000 in assets. Maybe he's got a nice big brand new house, so we'll say $1 million. Brand new mortgage on it. Again, Joe maybe makes about 80,000 after tax. And again, you can customize the different number of years that you'd like the income replacement for. Again, if you're doing more of a preservation strategy, add a couple more years on there to account for that. I'm going to put in 10 years. And again, we'll say Joe has some kids, so we'll put in education value. We'll put 20,000. Given that Joe's 50, we might say that the kids are already 2 years through kind of university, and that we have 2 kids. So again, all these kind of things are variable. You can change kind of the value. Nice thing too is if you do link your client to fill these little tooltips will actually kind of tell the Canadian averages for the client. Again, we're going to say like external debt, maybe Joe doesn't have that much debt other than the house, so we'll just say like maybe 50,000 in debt, line of credit, that kind of thing. And again, we want to build in some last expenses, so I'm going to put $20,000. Again, any sort of other expenses, maybe they have a cottage or something like that, and it could be subject to capital gains. Again, you could always add something like capital gains and just say, if they're going to be taxed on that, maybe there's, the cottage has gone up significantly in value, and we may have 300,000 of capital gains tax that we, kind of expect on that cottage property. Now, I've come up with an actual insurance need of $2.2 million. I can go ahead and save that, and again, that is going to be documented on the client file. We're always going to have a record of that with this particular case. Given some of the needs that we collected from Joe, we know there are things like a cottage in play. We know there are some short-term and some long-term insurance needs. So now we can go ahead and sort of satisfy the product suitability. Of course, with a $2.2 million need, there's a lot of different ways to solve this issue. And some, again, as we say, could be term and could be temporary. Some could be more permanent, or we could also present a blended option or a layered option to that client. So let's go ahead and fulfill our product suitability and find out why do we come to a certain decision and how are we going to solve this? Obviously, there's lots of carriers we could go to. I'm going to put $2.3 million in my insurance benefit. I'm just going to round up for my needs analysis, but it's going to be pretty evident why I went to a round number. And it's always, again, good to counter that inflation aspect. But again, you can use any sort of value there, even if it is different slightly than that needs analysis exact value. Just things like banding. Now, again, we want to show Joe some options. We don't want to just simply point at an option and say, well, this is the one we think is best for you. We want to give choice because that way we've disclosed different ways to solve the problem while still giving a recommended option. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to search for term insurance here. Again, I'm going to do 10-year term, regular health risk, out of my preferred companies. Again, you can change these around and even set your defaults in the account setting. But again, what it's going to do is provide us a really great kind of overview of the market and showing us, sort of our best options all the way down the line based on price. So again, a lot of great options out there. One thing I am seeing a lot more is that, what we could do as well, and I'll just zoom back here a little bit, is we could say that these are the results here. And, if we're looking at, some of these top options, we could even take a picture of the survey. So I'm just going to take a quick picture of these kind of top 3 results and say, I am going to select one that I think is best based on medical underwriting. It could be based on conversion options. It could be ease of, application or things like that. But again, I want to keep that file, to say that, I've done this, and again, I'll add this to the case. So again, I'll take my Manulife product, but I've captured a picture of that survey. And one of the things I'm going to do with that picture of the survey, you can see it's added it to the case, but there is document storage attached to the case as well. So if you get in a habit, again, of even taking a picture of that survey, again, I can just take that screenshot, maybe I rename it to something like T10 survey, and I can add it into the case and simply upload it. Now, I'm always going to have a record of anything I uploaded, and it is going to be tied to this case as well. So again, we're really building this sort of backup of how we come to that product suitability and just showing our work. Very easy way. Again, I can go through and add multiple different products to it. Like I said, I could add a layered plan to it and some whole life. In this case, I may just for brevity, I may do some universal life here and show them that. So again, this would be kind of a permanent solution for the full $2.3 million. Repeating that process and saying, okay, let's search for a T100 min funded. Again, we can see it's quite expensive, but we can go through that survey and simply add to case. And again, you might get in the habit as well and say, okay, here were the results for our UL survey. I'm going to capture these and add the particular product that I want to the case. And again, I can even grab this kind of, you can see my screenshot here. And I can even go, if I scroll down here a little bit, I can even just sort of drag and drop that in there. So again, you can see if I upload that, it's dragged that screenshot in there, and I can upload that to the case as well. So it is easy as dragging and dropping, or you can again select from the file browser, and you're going to see both of our surveys are there. Now, I want to get a little bit more advanced here on this case as well, and I want to say, there are other options for layering plans too. And for that, I might do something like whole life here. And again, I'll just go down and select Manulife and go over to my Illustrator while that's loading. Now, this is where I can design something specific. So if I know cash flow is an issue, or I know the needs are changing and I want to design a layered solution, again, this is where I could put in, my $2.3 million, or maybe in this case, I'm going to say $1 million of par, and I'm just doing pay for 20 years. You can obviously adjust any of these kind of values. I'm doing paid up insurance rather than cash, and I've got to adjust my age here to 50 for Phil Mickelson here. Again, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a term rider on here, and so I'm going to make up the other 2.3 in term rider. So I'm going to say this is $1.3 million of term rider. And maybe I'll make it a 20-year and just say that the duration is 20. And the reason I'm doing this, and I need an extra 0 there, the reason I'm doing this is because I actually want that term rider to fall off for some of those changing needs. So again, presumably maybe we're paying down some debt, or the kids have left school, maybe the house is paid off if it's an accelerated mortgage. But again, I'm trying to make the premium a little bit more palatable and kind of adjust for those changing needs. So really design this whichever way you think about sort of the client. But process is the same as always. Regardless of what you design, you can always view the illustration, export that information to Excel, and then from there very easily pull this in to kind of that client file. And you'll see, again, I can either save this file, and actually in this case I am going to save it. So I'm going to say save as. I'm going to save it to my desktop. So let's go recent. I'll save it to downloads. And this is, I'll just call it menu spread. All right, and I'll go ahead and save that. And I can minimize my spreadsheet here. I'll just pop back over to LDA here, where this is where, again, I can import that spreadsheet. I'll just click here. We know we saved it to downloads. And again, I can open that up there. Now, one other thing you may want to do, again, just in the sake of keeping a complete client file, yes, you're always going to have that sort of information on the case itself, so you can see it's been imported successfully. But if I go down again into that file storage, you may think about, again, saying, I'm going to upload that Manulife spreadsheet to the document storage. And again, you'll always have a copy of that spreadsheet if you wanted to re-download it to perhaps re-illustrate a different way in the future. The other thing I've seen kind of recently as well is that, the spreadsheet is fantastic because it's what we consume, but sometimes, these cases, especially the larger ones, can drag on a little bit longer, and you may need to re-illustrate it in kind of the Manulife software. So something else you can do is you can say, I'm going to save this whole Manulife illustration, and they have their own sort of unique file type, MLPR. I'm going to go ahead and save that to the desktop, and I will just call it Joe.mlpr, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. And so this is Joe's illustration now. Now, the other nice thing, again, with that document storage is I can come back here and I could say, if we ever need to re-illustrate this in the future, so again, I save that one to the desktop, I'll upload the Joe.mlpr and upload it. So again, even years down the line, if you needed to re-illustrate that, you could just simply click on Joe.mlpr. It would launch up your Diamond View and basically be able to re-illustrate. So all of those client details would be done, but of course, whatever the current pricing at the time was. So unlike the spreadsheet, which is sort of static, the MLPR, or the carrier kind of extension file, will actually load up the Illustrator with all of kind of the client variables here. So everything from that term rider, client age, all of that, like if you entered the date of birth, of course, all of that would load up there. And I see a lot more people are uploading that kind of information to the client file. Now, the next piece that we want to put in there is some kind of advisor disclosure. So a lot of people will actually do this in their account settings. They'll put kind of a general disclaimer on there, but I want to put a full-on advisor disclosure in there. Now, there are certain sort of advisor disclosures, or what I'll call global report notes. So again, things like a reason why letter or advisor disclosure template. These are sort of boilerplates. You could either fill these in, so we kind of made them as blank so that you guys could fill them in. What I would recommend, if you're going to be using this again on every single case, is that you go in, and I'll just kind of I'll grab all this and copy it. You can also clone these, but just for brevity. And then go to the bottom here where it says Manage Templates. Now you can add, because oftentimes you need multiple kind of, you might need a reason why and an advisor disclosure. Again, you can add multiple different report notes to an individual template. So I'm going to call this, filled in AD template. And I'm just going to put advisor disclosure. This is where I'd fill this in, and then I can put in and then this would be your client name. So again, we'd leave that. So at the top, and this is you, the licensing agent. So let's just say Charlie. I'm licensed as a licensed insurance in the provinces of, and I could say like Ontario. And then I could say companies I'm contracted with. So it could be like Manulife Canada And again, customize this sort of boilerplate template for yourself. Again, you may even think of going into kind of your account settings and just even pulling from the company list and putting it in there like that. Again, for this kind of example, I'm just going to put in some placeholders here. I'll clean this up just a touch, just so it all looks even. Relationships and concerns I'm contracted with, compensation, conflicts of interest, my contract on page on the last page of this document. Again, this is more for the client. The client, have been informed, so we can leave this blank so that when we hand it to them, they can sign that. And again, this is where the signature pad is going to go. So again, I'm going to save my unique customer template, which I called filled in. And again, this is, we provide kind of a generic one for you. You guys can simplify it. So when I go back to my last case, you'll notice that when you do customize these sort of templates to now include my advisor disclosure, complete with companies, you'll see there's a user defined section. And this is the one we just created here, filled in AD template. Again, make as many of these as you feel are necessary. You'll also see that when you go in, you can clone our existing ones and sort of modify off them. So you don't have to necessarily do the copy and paste, but for brevity, it helps. So again, I'm just going to say my filled in AD disclosure, and that's going to be all included in the report itself. So let's go ahead and generate the report. I'll take out some of these just to kind of make this a little bit more, I'll include IRR in there, but essentially I'm going to make this a little bit more condensed report, include the report components or kind of concepts that you think are appropriate, and go ahead and generate that report. So again, we've got a report for our client. Of course, this is where we would generate it, either a PDF or share the link to that specific report. I'll go ahead and generate one just for my records here, and just kind of show you how you might work with that signature page as well. But essentially, if you think about some of the kind of the compliance requirements, like a general E&O disclaimer, you've got your advisor disclosure in there. You've got the needs analysis in there. And so when we think about the value of kind of a client file, if we were passing this off to a new advisor taking over our block of business, if they could see that we had on every single case performed a consistent needs analysis, performed a suitability analysis, included things like our advisor disclosure, had things like the spreadsheet that they were illustrating, some of the, maybe even that compliance PDF would be another thing that we could pull into that client file. Again, these are all going to go through to say, how did you decide that the whole life was suitable for this client? Well, that adds a lot of value to the client file, and as a result adds a lot of value to your block of business, because, just because someone had a whole life, what happens if it underperforms and it comes back as an issue with the insurance company, and they say you didn't show us that there were guaranteed examples or reduced examples. So again, all of this stuff are things that you can again show how and take your clients through how you determined a product was suitable for them. Again, designing things like that layered solution where again we have a high insurance need at the beginning. Kids get a little bit older, debt gets a little bit lower, we pay down the house, and all of a sudden now, again, we can see our insurance benefit. So again, we've taken some time to design a solution that we think is suitable for the client. We can pose it as our recommendation and really prove, why the other options may not be suitable and really disclose that to the client and have that on file. So again, we can go through kind of our whole report. We've analyzed it. We've got this great presentation summary. And again, we can go back to our case here. Now, this would be a great opportunity again. As I said, if we go over into that illustration file, another piece that we may want to keep with this just for our records would be the actual compliant illustration. So again, when I say view report for this plan that I've created, it's going to include a lot more of those kind of disclosures from the insurance carrier. Again, LDA is never trying to replace, that compliance illustration. We're simply trying to communicate the options. We still want you to use, these kind of illustrations as well for compliance or for when you actually apply to it. But again, I can simply download this. So I'll just call this MLPR, just give it its stock name. And while I'm over here on Joe Smith, this is another great example of something I could add to that client file and upload. And again, I've got my survey proof of how I came to pick a specific option. I've got my original illustration there, more for convenience. I've got the spreadsheet that I used to load into LDA. Now I've got that actual compliance illustration. Now, there may be other documents, things like KYC documents. You may have your own sort of Word documents that you're kind of used to sending to your client. By all means, that would be another great thing to do. So again, I'm just going to open this one in Finder. I'll open it up here. And again, if I'm the client on this, you can see I can go through kind of the PDF of this report. And what we really wanted, though, was kind of the signature from our client. So again, I can simply mark this up and say I'm going to sign it as the client here. So I'll just pick my signature, move it in here, and again I can add my text. Hi Charlie. Again, adjust this as you see fit. Have informed, and again, I'm just going to say done. So now that I've got kind of my signed report that I've presented to my clients, I can also upload that document into LDA. So same sort of thing. I'm going to go into the file viewer, and I save that one to my downloads, and this is the report for Joe Smith. I'm going to open that up there, and again, simply upload it. So I've got a lot of these kind of compliance and supporting elements, but you can see the value that I'm creating on this case because I've got a really strong compliance backup. We can see sort of the due diligence that's been done on the report, and we get a really good sense of the professionalism of the advisor. And these are all things that can go towards increasing the value of your block of business. Because again, when we think about, that's fine today, we've got all of this. It didn't really take us that long to upload any of the documents, but 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, you can simply click on one of these files, basically bring it up and have all of your documentation right there, right? So here's our advisor disclosure. We've signed it. We've got the client signature in there. We've got our needs analysis in there. We've got the different products that we presented, our analysis, our suitability, and all of this is saved on record. So again, when we can show and tell to an advisor who is buying our block of business that we have all this, again, as I said, it's going to exponentially increase the value of our block of business. So really encourage you, I know we'd like to do this on big cases. Sometimes we miss it on small cases. We're really trying to make this process easy for you to do on every single case. So when you think of life insurance, think of LDA, but make sure you add these supporting elements. If not just for today and just for convenience for yourself, think of the value of that you're adding to your block of business in the future. Now, all of these kind of supporting elements are tied to the case in this example when we use that document storage from the design case. We had some great feedback the other day that some documents are not necessarily case specific, but rather client specific. So if I go back to sort of Joe Smith, our client that we created in the first place, you can see, we have our case that we've kind of built. We don't have any enforced policies just yet, but we'll get to that in a second. But there is also now we've added a document storage for client files. So again, something that would be more client specific, not necessarily tied to that exact case where we were pitching products, but maybe as we kind of mark something in force on this. So again, if we go to this case as an example, if we sell a certain product, so let's just pretend, for example, we sell this Manulife Term 10. Again, we can go in, of course, in LDA and say edit this plan. We can mark it and say save as a policy. If you mark it as sold, it saves it in that monthly stats report that you get. But basically, the benefit of saving a policy is that all of those renewals, and of course, it's going to say when did you sell this, so I'll just call it today, and I'll just give it a policy number, ABC 123. And I'll click save. Now, the nice thing about saving a policy in the system is, of course, it's going to add it to that in-force policy automation. So as it approaches things like the exchange, the conversion, you're going to get reminded in your account. The other benefit is that we can always create a new case and pull that information in there. But let's pretend, again, going back to document storage on the client file versus necessarily just the storage in the case. Again, the illustration and all that makes sense for the case we're creating, but there may be some forms and documents that you may want to add to the client file itself. So for example, if we did save this and sell this policy, yes, we want to add it into our in-force, so it's going to add into that automation. Other things you might think of uploading though to this client file would be things like, for example, the actual sample in-force policy. So again, I've just kind of got a blanked out one here just as an example, but I could simply take this in-force policy and I could just bring it in here and upload it. And that way I always have that statement. So again, if you get in the habit of things like the statement files would be a good example. Another good example might be something like a KYC. So again, if I've got a KYC done for a client, you can see here, I just kind of mocked one up here. This would be know your client forms. May not make sense on the case side of things, but it certainly makes sense from a document storage. So there are certain files that, again, you may want to save to the case. There are certain ones that you may want to save to this client file area. So again, when we remember in the beginning, it was just blank. It was all of kind of our tombstone information. Now we've got sort of our case and how we came to that decision. We sold the policy, we marked it in sold, and we've got our kind of sample in-force policy illustration, or our annual statement uploaded to that document file. And so again, just a different way to save files that are more globally accessible to that client, rather than having to go through each individual case and find, kind of those supporting elements. Switching gears for a second, this is all great while you're building your practice, and again, as I said, it's going to make your book of business more valuable if you can show that you have all these supporting elements. One of the other aspects you can use LDA for whether acquiring a block of business or selling yours, are things like the in-force policy management. So we really encourage you to go through and import your clients. Again, it's going to give you a global view of your block of business. The same, though, can be true if you are acquiring a block of business from another advisor and wanted to evaluate it. You might want to look at, how much opportunity is there in that block of business? How much overdue term 10? What kind of products in there? Are there a lot of conversion opportunities coming up in advance? And so what you might do if you were working with an advisor to acquire and evaluate, what the multiple should be or how many policies are actually in there, is have them request their clients so that you can import them. Or again, maybe they can import them into LDA. Again, it's very important because we're going to look at sort of that composition of the block of business. So I'm going to show this really quickly here. I've got sort of, I use my account as a lot of testing. So I've got a lot of different clients in here. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to the import clients, and I've set up sort of an example with our generic template. So I'm just going to say import, and I've got a file here that I've sort of prepared. So again, I'm just going to select my CSV file, and I'll just show you here. I've got some sample clients. Now, what you can ask us to do when we're importing them is basically tag them. So in the policy description, you can say, I've tagged this as advisor B, and I'm going to pretend that this is the advisor I'm looking to acquire the block of business. So they would request these. We would kind of augment that file to tag, certain, this is this block, this is this block. Again, we're going to bring it in, and I'm just going to upload it here very easily to the system. Perfect, it's been imported. If for whatever reason it does not pan out, again, in that import area, you can always go and delete clients as well. So if you want to look at it temporary, you can always delete it later if for some reason it doesn't work out. Now, when we go back to our manage clients, we can do things like look in that policy name for advisor B. So you'll see I'm just putting in all these rows at the top are tags. So you can see here it's gone through, and just because in the policy name we had added a little tag, advisor B, we can now look at all of the policies that are in force under that specific advisor. And you can see we have 91 total entries. So we know the policy count of these policies that we're buying is 91, and we can check that with what we're being sold or what we're being told. You might also use this to look at composition. So again, if we were thinking, maybe there's a lot of YRT policies that represent an opportunity, we could simply in that description search for YRT and see how many different records show up. So again, we can see all these different YRTs. And I just sort of hacked this in there just to kind of give an example. But you can see here, we've got advisor B. We see a lot of YRT policies. Maybe there's 10, and we see that as opportunity. Again, looking at the face value, things like the issue date, and we can determine things, how many term 10 policies are overdue, and apply these filters to run sort of analysis on what's actually in the block of business. Perhaps it might be things, rather than searching YRT, it might be looking for things like how much Sun Life is there, or how many Empire Life policies are there, and seeing and breaking down sort of the carriers there. So whether you are selling and presenting this block of business to someone and showing them, here are the term 10s, here's how many I have in force, here's how many are overdue, here's how many are coming up for conversion. You can really give a better sense of either what you have, or again, on the other side of the coin, if you're looking at acquiring a block of business, ask that advisor to maybe provide you with spreadsheet files and have them request them. We can tag them to separate them from your original clients. And again, you can go through and dissect and run different filters to see what's actually in that block of business, or how many Term 10 policies there are that fit that sort of criteria. So great way to kind of splice and dice the block of business. This is one of the areas we will likely focus on a lot more in the future, so I really welcome any sort of feedback in this area. As I mentioned before, like let's say for instance we went in, we imported the clients under that tag, but we wanted to delete them. We can simply go up to delete clients, and simply hit delete on the most recent import. So again, each import that you do is going to be stored separately, so you can always delete one that you've brought in if for whatever reason the deal doesn't go through. Now, there are a lot more ways that you can increase the value of your business or find a good succession partner that are outside of LDA. A lot of it is, of course, relationship and finding a fit with the advisor. There are lots of different ways to value the block of business and actually pay for it. And again, I would encourage you, go read our article on increasing the value of your block of business. At the end of the day, a book that is based on a certain revenue multiple or a certain commission multiple, the difference maker is going to be how you can, provide and show what you actually have and prove the value of those clients. So by having a better documented process for how you work with client files, it is definitely going to increase the value of your block of business. Now, we've recently switched over to Zoom for webinars, so this is our first run of it. So I hope you've enjoyed the experience this time. But one of the benefits of switching over to Zoom is that we can now open it up for some Q&A. So I'm going to bring in my team, and if you have any questions, send them through over the chat, and we'll try and answer them. But I really want to thank everyone for joining, and look forward to your feedback. Thanks so much. Take care.